Hi guys, I've had a question in from one of my dad's friends. Now, my dad's friend is wants to stretch a bit more, but he's getting into it from a point of having not stretched that much for maybe the last 40 years or so. So he feels pretty inflexible, doesn't know where to start, and wanted some advice. So it made me think, on all of the list of our YouTube videos, there aren't many videos out there that are great for complete beginners. So this is a stretch for complete beginners, or if you just feel super inflexible, if you've been sitting at a desk for the last 20 years and haven't done that much activity, this one's for you. The first thing to say is, at first, when you get into it, it's going to feel pretty daunting. It's going to feel like a really long journey ahead, almost to the point where it just makes most people want to stop stretching. They can't see the point in it. But there's two really cool things I want to tell you. The first thing is that our body follows something known as the SAID principle, S-A-I-D, which is our body has a specific adaptation to the imposed demand that we put on it. So as long as you're putting the right demand on your body, you will get the right specific adaptation. This happens as well while people were sitting at a desk for 20 years. They were getting the specific adaptation to sitting at a desk, so they can get tight through the hips, the chest, the upper back, the neck, they were adapting to the demand that they were putting on their body, the sitting. So as long as you're giving yourself the specific demand to ask your body to become more flexible, it will change. The other really cool thing that I learned recently is the fascia in our body, the connective tissue, the sinew that exists between muscles and wraps into joints and bones and things, that completely regenerates itself every 7 months. So the connective tissue that's in your body right now will be completely replaced within a 7-month period, and it will replace itself to cope with the demand you're putting on your body at any given time. So if the demand you're putting on your body is to use a keyboard a lot and hold a steering wheel a lot and look at an iPhone a lot, the way the fascia regenerates itself is to actually create tension through the chest and through the hips, for example, because it only needs to be coping with this. Whereas if you gradually start to expand this, we call it a sphere of function, the sphere around you in which you're functioning regularly, if you gradually expand that and your connective tissue system starts to get tested in all these different ranges, when it regenerates itself, it will be regenerating in a more elastic and flexible way that allows you to start building this sphere. So 7 months can seem daunting, but at the same time it's not that long. So if you just keep stretching, keep consistent for a minimum of 7 months, you'll start to notice really significant benefits and changes. So that's the kind of underlying principles with how you're going to stretch. You just need to be consistent. You need to keep putting this specific demand on your body. Acknowledge the fact that it will feel daunting and it'll feel like you've got a long way to go and you feel pretty rubbish when you begin. But don't worry about it. There's no way to get better other than putting specific demand on your body consistently over time. So they're the principles, and now we're going to dive into some simple stretches that you can do as a beginner. So one of the easiest ways to be consistent with anything is to make it super easy. Remove the barriers to entry to getting your exercise done. So what I like to do is find things around my home that allow me to stretch parts of my body. And that way I do it without even thinking. I just walk past the doorway in my kitchen, for example, and that's one of my stretch zones. So doorways are great. There's one of my favorite stretches for the back is, I call it the Superman stretch, because I was teaching this to a young kid and I said, how are you going to remember this stretch? And he said, well, it's like Superman, but to the side. So have your thumbs pointing at each other. You're going to grip the back of a door frame and push your hips away from your hands. So to make this possible, my feet are actually pretty close to the doorway. If I stand right back, I'm not going to get as much of a stretch. So I put my feet quite close to the doorway. I'm holding on to the architrave around the edge of the door. That's my grip. And then just push my hips back. And this is the starting point for the stretch. So I'm like Superman to the side. Or the other thing I say is make a banana. My whole body is like a banana shape now. And I'm just going to wriggle and twist. So if you're a complete beginner, it might not look like that. You might just have your hands on and you might not get very far, and that's fine. You can, to make it easier on yourself or harder depending on how far you want to go with it, you just change the height of your hands on the door frame. You can move your feet. So even though I said have your feet close to the door frame, you might want to start playing around with that, so you can change the angle of your toes to which way they're pointing relative to your hands. Or you can have your feet a bit wider. You can have one foot in front, other foot in front. Just play around with what works, and what you'll find is as long as you're paying attention to what your body's telling you, you'll feel some pretty nice sensations as this decompresses down the side of the shoulder, the thorax, the lower back, and you'll just notice makes you feel a bit more fluid. To switch to the other side, I can't hold here because of the door frame, so I'd step through the door frame and go onto that side there. You're going to do this both sides and just wriggle. When you find a tightness somewhere in your shoulder, thorax or lower back, you're just going to wriggle and breathe and sway your hips until that softens, and that might take up to a couple of minutes each side. The other basic thing to do at home is to use the stairs or a chair as a tool to put your foot on so we can get into the thighs and the hips. So when you're about to walk up the stairs, you can put one foot on, say, the second or third step, or even the first step when you're a complete beginner, to get into the hamstrings. So here you're looking to hold on to something for balance, a wall or a banister, and just lean forwards, pushing your tummy towards your knee. And once you feel a stretch down the back of the leg, you can just gently twist and turn and wriggle. If that feels too difficult, the lower your foot is, the easier it will be. And if that feels too difficult, never worry about putting a bend in the knee. You don't actually need the knee to be completely locked out to stretch your hamstrings. Softening that knee and then leaning forwards will bring the stretch a bit more into the muscle belly. So don't worry about putting a bend in the knee, that's fine as you begin. And as you wriggle and twist, you're just going to aim to try and get a little bit lower as the days, weeks and months go on. The other one you can do is put your foot onto the same step, maybe even a teeny bit higher for this one. We're going to get into the front of the back hip now. So whereas just now we were stretching this hamstring, now I'm going to stretch this hip flexor just by pushing forwards. And this is really important to have balance for this one. And hold on to the side for balance and just gently twist and wriggle. You can, whichever hip I'm stretching, I'm going to use that same side hand just to reach up and twist around, and that will open up my lats and lower back as well. And we can get a nice stretch here using the steps. And then lastly, while we're in this space in your house, you can step up onto a step, put the ball of the foot on the edge of the step and push the heel down and just gently twist and turn and wriggle, and this will get into your calves. And stretching the thighs, calves and hips has a huge impact on just how fluid you are in your walking and running and just being able to bend and pick stuff up. But it also takes a lot of pressure off your lower back and helps your lower back become more functional as well. So this is quite an important starting point for most people. So the list of stretching is endless, but I hope that those simple things using the door frame and the stairs are a starting point. Don't put any pressure on yourself in terms of how far you're going to stretch and how flexible you're going to feel. The only pressure you should put on yourself is to turn up. Turn up every day and do little bits of this every day, and accept that it's going to take months, not days, not weeks, but months and maybe even years to make truly significant changes. But as long as you're putting that specific demand on your body, you will adapt, and your connective tissue is constantly changing and regenerating itself. You can get more flexible no matter what your age, as long as you're putting the right demand on your body. So if you have any questions, comment below. Also subscribe to our channel because there are new ideas coming out every week. And if you have any other questions, let me know.